morning, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to the First Unitarian Society of Milwaukee. My name is Natalie Quinton, and I am delighted to serve as your worship associate today and to welcome you fully into this space. We welcome people of all genders, sexualities, ages, races, ethnicities, histories, and bodies here. We welcome your mind, your heart, and your spirit here. We welcome all you are bringing with you today and all your heart longs to set down. We welcome all of you. We extend a special welcome to each guest among us. Guests are warmly invited to attend the Inquirer's session today immediately after the service in the parlor to learn more about Unitarian Universalism and our church in a smaller casual gathering. We invite our guests to fill out a welcome card located in the pew rack in front of you and drop it off in the offering plate later in the service. You can also pick up a welcome packet at the back of the sanctuary. Hearing assist devices and Braille hymnals are available in the rear of the sanctuary as well, and a fragrance-free area is located on the right front side of the sanctuary. If you are a visiting family, including children and youth, after the time for all ages noted in your order of service, please join the children's recessional and head across the hall to the common room. There you'll be greeted by someone who will orient you to our religious education. Immediately following the service, everyone is invited for coffee and conversation in the common room. My name is Natalie, and you can come talk to me at the guest table there. As a way to engage at First Church, I invite everyone to explore the announcements insert for the numerous opportunities available here. In particular, let me draw your attention to a few. Today's forum, entitled Milwaukee Farmers Union, New Approach to Eating Local, will be presented by Janice Christensen at 1010 upstairs in Max Auto Hall. For the sake of Earth and all creatures, our Earth Justice Ministry team invites us to participate in postcard advocacy during both coffee hours today at the social justice table. Postcards, pens, addresses, and message prompts for our local leaders will be provided. Volunteers are needed to provide food or help serve a taco meal at the Cathedral Center shelter for women and children next Saturday evening, May 4th. Please sign up at the social justice table today. Please find details on these and more events in our announcements insert. And finally, please silence any electronic devices for the remainder of the service. Before we go into our unison reading of our mission today, I'm lucky enough to get the opportunity to invite our newest choral scholar up, our tenor, Christopher Johnston.
Hello, my name is Christopher Johnston. My pronouns are he, him, his, and one way I find wholeness in nature is, I'm from Pewaukee, Wisconsin, very beautiful place, and we're surrounded by parks. And one way I find wholeness is to go for walks in those parks and just listen to the birds sing and the trees rustle. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Once again, I welcome you to First Church by inviting you to join me in the unison reading of our mission, which is printed in your order of service. We gather to nurture the spirit, engage the mind, and inspire action. I'd now like to invite Thea and Nolan Waters up to help light our chalice today.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good to see you today on our Earth Day Sunday. Surprise! These words are from Lynn Harrison, committed to respond. Committed to respond to the call of a wounded world. We join together this day with loving hearts, hands, and minds, embracing the interconnected web of water, air, and earth. We light a fire of sustaining hope, ever bright with love and justice. Please rise in body or spirit to sing O Brother's Son in the Teal hymnal number 1066. And we're going to hum it all the way
there was only one thing for a curious boy to do. Liam ran up the stairs, he pushed open the door, and he stepped out onto the railway. The first thing he saw was a lonely patch of color. Wildflowers and plants were the last thing he had expected to find up there. But when he took a closer look, it became clear that the plants were dying and they needed a gardener. Liam may not have been a gardener, but he knew that he could help. So he returned to the railway the very next day and got to work. The flowers nearly drowned, and he had a few pruning problems, but the plants patiently waited for Liam to find better ways of gardening. And as the weeks rolled by, Liam began to feel like a real gardener, and the plants began to feel like a real garden. After spending his spring and summer and autumn with the garden, Liam's time on the railway was finally interrupted by winter. Heavy blankets of snow fell on the city that season, possibly all the way until the end of April. And for the first time since he'd become a gardener, Liam could not visit the plants. Rather than waste his winter worrying about the garden, Liam spent it preparing for the spring. And after 3 cold months, the snow finally began to melt, and Liam rolled his new gardening gear over to the railway. Winter had taken a toll on the garden, but thanks to Liam's planning, his handy new tools, and a little help from the sun, the plants soon awoke from their winter sleep. The garden had always wanted to explore the rest of the city, and that spring it was finally ready to make its move. Once again, the tough little weeds and mosses set out first. They popped up farther and farther and farther from the railway and were closely followed by more delicate plants. The garden was especially curious about old forgotten things. And a few plants popped up where they didn't belong. Others mysteriously popped up all at once. But the most surprising things that popped up were the new gardeners. Many years later, the entire city had blossomed. But of all the new gardens, Liam's favorite was where it all began. Much like Liam, you don't have to be a gardener to be in relationship with nature. May you all have the chance to visit the green spaces of our city this summer and possibly carry a little garden with you from time to time. Well, we have some exciting news to share with you all. As you all know, I've been serving as an interim capacity this year as your RE coordinator, while the search team searched for a new settled director of religious education. Last week, the search team's offer to become our new DRE beginning August 1st of 2019 was accepted by Kimberly Tomczak Carlson.
Hello, First Unitarian Society of Milwaukee. My name is Kimberly Tomczak Carlson, and I am delighted to be greeting you as your next Director of Religious Education. The opportunity to work at First Unitarian Society of Milwaukee is a dream come true for me. I've admired your congregation's reputation as a historic, vibrant, and social justice church, and I am thrilled to be joining your staff team and your faith community to do work that I have long been dedicated to, religious education and ministry for our Unitarian Universalist families and children. My work in this field has inspired me to attend seminary, and right now I am finishing up my theological education at Meadville, Lombard, where I will graduate in just 2 short weeks. I am so very eager to return to doing the work of religious education, the work I am most passionate about. I've had the pleasure to meet your search committee and your ministers, and I'm looking forward next to meeting and working with all of you. My family roots are firmly planted in Wisconsin and in Unitarian Universalism. My home church was the First Unitarian Society of Madison. I currently live in Kenosha, Wisconsin with my amazing and energetic 6-year-old Miles, and my partner, Eric David Carlson, who is the minister at the Bradford Community Church, UU. I am a religious naturalist, I am a clay artist, and I am a Doctor Who fan. And I am joyful to be invited into your community to do this vital work of faith formation with you. I can hardly wait to begin the journey and see where it takes us all. Blessings to all of you, and I look forward to being with you very soon. Thank you.
I'm really excited to begin working with Kimberly this August. As you could hear in her voice, I hope, her joy and passion for Unitarian Universalism and religious education is contagious, as is her energy for transformation and her love of families. It's been a joy for me to work with the DRE search team, and I just want to thank them. Please join me in thanking Amy Wilborn, Sarah Richards, John Fetak, Kevin Driscoll, Lori Baker, Christine Hansen, Busy Schultz, and Reverend Jennifer. If any of you are here, please stand. We'd like to thank you. There's one of you! There's another one! There's another one! We hope you'll join us in welcoming Kimberly at a casual reception after the service on August 4th, when there will be no snow. Please rise as you're able, and we'll sing our children's recessional, 10. As we enter our centering time of meditation, I'd invite you to find yourself in the pew or the chair, find your feet on the floor, and find your breath coming deep and easy in your belly. These meditation words are by Mark Bellatini, Communion Circle. The earth, one planet, round, global, so that when you trace its shape with your finger, you end up where you started. It's one. It's whole. All the dotted lines we draw on our maps of this globe are just that, dotted lines. They smear easily. There is only one earth we all share. We, the living, with all else that lives and does not live. Everything, everything, for good or ill, is part of the shared whole. Sky, earth, song, words, and now, this silence.
When my oldest child was a baby, he was a car napper, as in he'd pretty much only take a nap if he was being driven around in a car. He'd cry and cry for about 15 minutes, sometimes more, a lot of the times more. And the only thing I could say to myself was, he will fall asleep. This won't last forever. But it was so unenjoyable to be locked in a moving vehicle with the screaming baby. It was trying for sure. Typically, if I had no other destination to reach, I would tell Cyrus, my husband, that I was going to drive by my serenity spot. My serenity spot. The view when driving by this spot was the perfect combination of tall trees with a sun-kissed lake and a glimpse of the city in the distance. Earth, sun, air, and water all at once. When I headed north on Superior Street towards Oklahoma Avenue, I'd be there in a few short minutes. Then I could breathe in this perfect piece of nature. And for me, in those moments, I felt grounded. I felt whole. It was all I needed to be reminded that there is and will be so much more than this particular moment of a screaming baby in a car. Nature has been so kind to provide me the chance to recover my equilibrium with these senses of spirituality over the years. Now that I'm a parent to 2 young children, I feel a sense of responsibility to share nature's beauty, but also instill the importance of caring for this earth as equally as it cares for us. This past Monday, my kids and I volunteered for an Earth Day event at the Bayview Community Center. We were able to plant seeds, work with the compost crusaders, and make binoculars and magic trash wands out of recycled material, which then we used during a neighborhood cleanup to pick up garbage. At the end, my favorite part was when my son said, "That was really fun, but we do this stuff all the time, Mom." Taking care of Earth is a daily part of our lives, and sometimes I don't even realize how well it's shaping their world. We don't use chemicals to clean our house. I'm a Norwex consultant, so basically we use Norwex microfiber and water. We don't even own paper towel. We recycle, we compost, we turn off the lights when we leave a room, and we turn off the water while we brush our teeth. Anytime my kids bring a lunch, it comes in a reusable container with real silverware and a cloth napkin. Recently, a customer of mine asked me how I get the kids to bring it home. I had to think for a moment, but they've never known any other way, so it's obvious to them that they should bring it back. This land that we live on gives us all her beauty and resources, never asking for anything in return. It's all I can do to try to make her as whole as she leaves me. I love that we don't have to go far to find places of serenity. Even if it's just one quick drive up Superior Street to Oklahoma Avenue, nature is right there waiting to bring me that sense of wholeness again. In return, I'm glad to know that I'm doing my best to teach my children to appreciate nature and leave it in a better condition than they found it. After all, as Gary Snyder, poet and environmental activist, once said, nature is not just a place to visit, it is home.
Neurologist and author Oliver Sacks wrote, "I have a number of patients with very advanced dementia or Alzheimer's disease who may have very little sense of orientation to their surroundings. They have forgotten or cannot access how to tie their shoes or handle cooking implements. But put them in front of a flower bed with some seedlings, and they will know exactly what to do. I have never seen such a patient plant something upside down." An elderly lady with Parkinson's disease whom I met in Guam, he continued, often found herself frozen, unable to initiate movement, a common problem for those with Parkinsonism. But once we led her out into the garden, where plants and a rock garden provided a varied landscape, she was galvanized by this and could rapidly, unaided, climb up the rocks and down again. Sacks noticed a powerful healing connection between humans and nature. Did planting flower seedlings cure his patients of advanced dementia? Did time in the rock garden stop the progression of Parkinson's? Not likely. But the wholeness of those human beings was restored, even if for just a moment, during the time they spent outdoors, in greenery, connected to nature. Not unlike us, I'd wager. In what place outdoors do you feel most whole? Where is your serenity spot? And how often do you spend time there? I believe that we need to go to those places often to heal and recharge our bodies, minds, and spirits, so we can keep in touch with the spirit of life moving throughout all beings. Because how can we effectively work to heal the earth unless we are connected to nature from a place of love and joy? Oliver Sacks wrote, "Clearly nature calls to something very deep in us. Biophilia, the love of nature and living things, is an essential part of the human condition. Hortophilia, the desire to interact with, manage, and tend nature, is also deeply instilled in us. The role that nature plays in health and healing becomes even more critical for people working long days in windowless offices, for those living in city neighborhoods without access to green spaces, for children in city schools, or for those in institutional settings, such as nursing homes. The effects of nature's qualities on health are not only spiritual and emotional, but physical and neurological. I have no doubt that they reflect deep changes in the brain's physiology and perhaps even its structure. I wonder, why is this true about the human brain? Do you think that people who have lived in cities all their lives and never been to a forest or a meadow also have brains that love nature? During a Hidden Brain podcast on NPR called Our Better Nature, How the Great Outdoors Can Improve Your Life, host Shankar Vedantam said, "For most of the last 2 million years, humans lived in a natural world, relying on nature for food and shelter. The amount of time we've spent in urban dwellings is a small sliver of the total time humans have spent on Earth. When you look at it this way, our shift from forest life to freeways and overflowing cities has been very recent and very dramatic. He interviewed researcher Ming Kuo on this Hidden Brain podcast. Ming Kuo has been studying the effects of nature on humans for the last 30 years. She works at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. Early in her career, Ming studied research looking at the well-being of animals in zoos. Researchers found that even when animals were provided with all the basics of food, safety, and shelter, they often failed to thrive. When biologists studied animals in the wild, by contrast, they got an idea. I'm laughing because these things that just seem so natural to us, the scientists have to get an idea about it and name it in order to do something about it. That's just the way our communities work. So they got this idea called habitat selection theory, which is that beings are wired for whatever habitat that we evolved in. It just makes sense, doesn't it? And so there seems to be this general kind of rule, Ming said, that animals who are in their natural habitats will do much better and thrive. They thrive both physically and psychologically, and in terms of their social behaviors. So if zoo animals thrive in their natural habitat, some researchers asked, could this also be true of humans? Ming said, when you look at what people are like, with either more or less access to nature, you start to see a pattern where we see the same thing in humans that we saw in the zoo animals, which is that wonderful quote from E.O. Wilson, that organisms, when housed in unfit habitats, undergo social, psychological, and physical breakdown. And we are seeing precisely that in people. So when you have people who have a certain amount of access to nature, and then you give them a bit more, you see better social functioning. You see better psychological functioning and better physical health. Ming conducted a study at Robert Taylor Home's housing project, which was a series of 16 10-story buildings along a particular corridor in Chicago. And they were originally designed with greenery all around them. But over time, there wasn't much money for maintenance. So there are just a few places where the building managers did not end up just paving over what used to be grassy areas. And when they paved over those areas, they took the trees out, and so there was just asphalt. Ming said this was an unwitting kind of experiment where people are living in different buildings that are identical, and some of those buildings have a bit of trees and grass around them, and some of them don't. And so we just went about studying what the outcomes were for the people in those buildings. We looked at a bunch of things, but the short answer is we found social breakdown in buildings without trees and grass around them. That is to say, we asked people, did they know their neighbors? Did they speak to their neighbors? Did they know them on a first-name basis? Could they rely on their neighbors for a favor to take care of their kids if they had an emergency? The people in the buildings with greenery around them were much more likely to say yes. We also found that the folks who were in the less green buildings reported more aggressive behaviors, even though the density of population in the buildings was the same. There's a thing called attention restoration theory, Ming said, which says when people don't have access to nature, they're going to be more mentally fatigued. So when you're mentally fatigued, you're also less good at handling difficult social situations. And so we thought, okay, if nature is helpful for rejuvenating people from mental fatigue, then folks in buildings who don't have any access to nature are going to be that much more fatigued and that much more irritable and have that much more difficulty handling conflict in a productive way. Ming also did a follow-up study involving the Chicago Police Department crime statistics. They gave her 2 years' worth of crime statistics from another housing development to see if this general effect of greenery versus no greenery showed up there too. So she looked at a low-rise housing project instead of a high-rise and saw the same pattern in police records of crime. Well, many of us in Milwaukee do have access to green spaces, thanks to the vision of past socialist mayors. It's relatively easy for us to find a city park, a place to refresh our minds and bodies. But there are many in Milwaukee who do not have easy access to green spaces. I wonder how this is affecting people. It could be that living in spaces made of mostly concrete and asphalt is an unfit habitat for human beings, leading to that mental fatigue and contributing to social and psychological ills. The Hidden Brain podcast described a study that did an analysis of pharmacies in London, England, and the medications that those pharmacies dispense. Pharmacies in London are neighborhood-based, so pretty much people go to the pharmacy that's in their neighborhood. The researchers knew how green it was around each pharmacy, and they also knew how many people lived there, how many people the pharmacy served, and they found out how many prescriptions for anxiety disorder medications and depression medications were filled at each pharmacy. So they compared for pharmacies that have the same number of people with the same income approximately and looked at how many mood-related prescriptions that pharmacy gave. And a substantially larger number of those prescriptions, the less greenery was around the neighborhood. How does this happen that our mood and well-being is so influenced by greenery? When human beings look at green landscapes, something happens to us in our bodies. Our heart rate goes down, our sympathetic nervous activity, the fight or flight response, goes down, and our parasympathetic nervous activity, the tend and befriend response, goes up. If people can get out of the urban jungle for a few days and spend those few days in the woods, it can also have a beneficial effect on our immune system. Ming said researchers found after people spend a 3-day weekend in a forest preserve, their level of natural killer cells went up on average by 50%. And a 3-day weekend in a nice urban area, it turns out, doesn't do anything for your natural killer cells. And then she said, if a researcher knocks on your door 30 days after your 3-day weekend in the woods and asks for another sample of your blood, and you give it to them, it will show that you are still roughly 25% above your baseline number of natural killer cells. In his book, The Moth, Snowstorm, Nature, and Joy, Michael McCarthy wrote, in our towns and cities, staring into our screens, we need constant reminding that we have been operators of computers for a single generation and workers in neon-lit offices for 3 or 4. But we were farmers for 500 generations, and before that, hunter-gatherers for perhaps 50,000 more generations, living with the natural world as part of it as we evolved, and this legacy cannot be done away with. McCarthy, an award-winning environmental journalist, told Krista Tippett about a year ago, the natural world is where we evolved, and it is the resting place of our psyches. We might have left the natural world, but the natural world has not left us. In his book, he argues that, as he says, the sudden, passionate happiness which the natural world can occasionally trigger in us may well be the most serious business of all. He claims that the most effective way to protect and defend nature is to root our work in that joy. He says that the past reliance on the goodness of humankind has not worked to stem climate change, nor has focusing on sustainable development. It is only through helping people experience joy and peace in nature as that indispensable part of our essence that will awaken the fierce love necessary to halt the destruction of our own home. Fortunately for people living in Milwaukee, there are many organizations working to preserve, restore, and protect access to green spaces. And they are inviting all ages of people into those spaces to discover our inherent joy and love of nature. One of those organizations is the recipient of our Share the Plate this month. The River Revitalization Foundation's mission is to establish an urban parkway for public access, walkways, recreation, education, that borders the Milwaukee, Menominee, and Kinnickinnic rivers, to use the rivers to revitalize the surrounding neighborhoods and to improve water quality. The Urban Ecology Center is another great example. Their history is inspiring. In the early 1990s, people in the neighborhood of Riverside Park noticed that the park had become filled with trash and invasive species and was a place for crime. So the neighbors decided to clean it up with the ultimate goal of using the park to teach neighborhood children about ecology and being friends of the earth. Litter and crime would be replaced with learning, and so it was. As many of you know, almost 30 years later, Urban Ecology Center has 3 sites in Milwaukee where land stewardship, environmental education, sustainable food, recreation, and joy and love of nature are practiced daily as they fulfill their mission to connect people in cities to nature and each other. Earth Day is a time to confront our fear, anger, and despair over the human destruction of our only home, this earth, by reconnecting to our joy and love of earth. Earth Day is a time to find wholeness in nature and recommit to heal nature through our own humility and hope and action. And we cannot do this through pride alone. The poet Rumi wrote, "Very little grows on jagged rock. Be ground, be crumbled, so wildflowers will come up where you are." Thank you, Linda, Jack, and Chris. Please rise in body or spirit for the responsive reading by Billy Collins, printed in your order of service. I'll begin. But it is hard to speak of these things.
How the voices light in the body and begin to recite their stories.
How the earth holds us painfully against its breast, made of humus and brambles.
How we will soon be gone, regard the entities that continue to return in greener than ever.
Spring water flowing through a meadow, and the shadows of clouds passing over the hills.
And around where we stand, in the tremble of thought, taking the past outside into the light.
Let's join in singing for the earth. These closing words are by the poet Joy Harjo. Remember the sky you were born under. Know each of the stars' stories. Remember the moon. Know who she is. Remember the sun's birth at dawn. That is the strongest point of time. Remember sundown and the giving away tonight. Remember the earth whose skin you are. Red earth, black earth, yellow earth, white earth, brown earth. We are earth. Remember the plants, trees, animal life, who all have their tribes, their families, their histories too. Talk to them. Listen to them. They are alive poems. Remember, you are this universe, and this universe is you. Remember, all is in motion, is growing in you. Remember.